This is Angie Quidim with That's My Entertainment, and I'm here today with Kandice Martellaro. For those who haven't heard of her before, she's a comedian, she's a writer, and she's a part of the award-winning comedy group Femmbot PHD. You might have seen some of their stuff on Funny or Die, which is Will Ferrell's channel. And Kandice, I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity. This is great.
Thank you. Thank you for talking to me.
Well, let's get into it because everybody has a different story of how they started. What really made you get into comedy? I mean, of all things, it seems like it's a hard thing to start. So just wondering, what was it something you did in your childhood? What was that?
I guess really it kind of solidified in college. I always knew since I was a kid I wanted to be involved in making movies. And when I went to college, I went to film school. And while I was in film school, I realized I was really attracted to comedy. And the thing that really stuck out to me is I took a women in film class. And our professor, Melinda Barlow, pointed out that at that time there were very few teen comedies aimed at women. And I was like, oh, well, I want to be involved in changing that. And so I was like, I'm going to pursue comedy with everything I have. But the more I got into it, the more I realized I really liked TV comedy, I think more so than movies. In some way, I mean, it's not hard and fast, but in general, I really liked television. So I started pursuing that and taking some screenwriting. And then I knew I wanted to move to LA. And when I did, I started just taking sketch classes at UCB, and I'd spend a lot of my downtime at the Writers Guild Foundation Library just studying scripts of comedies I really like to watch. And that's sort of how I established myself initially, of just writing my own material and studying.
Who were your favorite writers for comedy?
Ooh, that's a really good question. It's so funny. I'm like drawing a blank.
Or do you have any personal favorite shows that you kind of drew inspiration on?
Absolutely. The point where I realized I wanted to write for TV, I was really into 30 Rock and Parks and Recreation.
Nice.
And so those were the two that really sold me. And of course, Saturday Night Live, I grew up watching, like everybody, I grew up watching that. And that was definitely a definitive thing of oh, I think I want to do that.
Did you ever imitate sketches?
I don't think I did any reenactments of sketches or trying to write actually sketch itself. I did make a lot of short films with friends though. And when I got to college, you had to make short films for class. So I was always doing comedy. For my thesis film, I did a really raunchy, crude comedy from a female perspective. So I did a lot of that type of thing where I'd kind of practice by writing my own original material and doing it in short form.
So one of the things that made me very curious is comedy right now, especially in this day and age, there's a little bit of sensitivity out there. So, and from my perspective anyway, comedy will offend because comedy always brings out the truth. So what's your process when you get that kind of, lashback? Because I think everybody handles it a little bit differently.
No, I'm really glad you brought this up, actually. My personal opinion on it, it's something I've given a lot of thought to for a while, is that I feel like it's a pendulum that's kind of swinging.
Right.
And I feel like in the 90s and early 2000s, the popular comedy was a lot of sort of shock jock humor, be as offensive as you can. And it was coming from a place of people watching people that were very good at that, like Trey Parker and Matt Stone with South Park, or Dave Chappelle, that really know what they're doing and really know how to use offensive humor to be funny. But then you'd get every other hacky comedian that thought they could imitate that, and that became kind of the norm. And it became really hurtful and really marginalized people, especially people that are already disenfranchised. And so I think as times changed, there's been a lot of pushback to that. And so now I feel the pendulum in many ways has swung completely the opposite direction, where you see a lot of comedians that get up and they're very into woke humor, which can verge on not being funny. It can verge on being very much that you'll see a comedian where you look at him and you go, you have a lot of opinions, but you didn't make me laugh once.
Right.
But I think, with any situation like that, I think the pendulum will swing and find a medium ground. Like, I think it'll level out, and I think we're starting to get there. I'm seeing a lot of comedians that are able to tell jokes that don't hurt people, especially people that are already disenfranchised or marginalized in some way, but are still very funny. I think there is a middle ground where you can find it. But yes, inevitably, Mike Birbiglia says this in his Thank God for Jokes comedy special of, every joke offends somebody. You're going to. It's just how it's going to be. It's just, I think, really assessing as a comedian, what are you saying with your jokes? Who are you going to upset, and is it worth upsetting them? Are you hurting a group of people that is already hurting by this joke, and, is it worth it for that laugh?
One of the things that I'm always curious to hear is when you wrote your first piece and it was being produced, and it doesn't matter in what medium, what was that like?
Are you referencing like anything I've self-produced, or the first time I wrote something and somebody else came in and produced it and made that a reality?
No, basically the first thing that you've ever written that you did not self-produce, that someone else actually took it and went with it.
Got it. Okay. So the first thing I've ever written that's been produced was my Stand Against Evil episode that will air in November.
Nice.
And that was the most surreal feeling ever. There's basically my experience with this is Dana Gould, the showrunner, offered me an episode, which was already felt crazy. It's my first time ever writing for television.
Oh.
And he did a really, really great job of kind of holding my hand and walking me through it, but at the same time giving me a lot of freedom to get creative.
Right.
And so what he told me up front was, I've gotten so used to self-producing that I've gotten used to writing within a lot of restrictions. So, you don't write for a big set, or you don't write for a crazy location, or, whatever. And he told me up front, he's like, no, write what your dream is, basically. Like, write what you want to see this as, and then production will pull it back if they need to, but put what you want on the page and then let production rein it in if they need to. And so I went ahead and I went for it, and I wrote this really elaborate prom scene, thinking for sure that we'd get the note back of like, no, we can't do this. You need to rewrite this as something else. And instead, we didn't get that note. And Molly Coffey in the production's art department went above and beyond making that a reality. They brought in background actors, and everybody looked really good. And I was just so shocked that exactly what I envisioned on the page was a real thing that people could just make happen. It was very much, I felt like a princess.
Wow. That because you hear a lot of different things from different writers where, things go really well, and then things kind of go, oh, that's not exactly. So this is that's a great thing to hear. Would you say that this kind of inspired you to do more in that realm, or where you're like, now that I see it and it's 100% true form, maybe I'll scale back? I mean, I'm sure that you have your own comments about what worked and what didn't, but now looking back on it after it's been actually produced, how do you feel about it?
Well, one thing I really admire about Stand Against Evil specifically is that it's not a show with a huge budget, but all the effects are shot practically. So they're all practical, so they make them on set. And I've been numerous times really impressed with the fact that the art department can take something that seems impossible and make it a reality with very little resources. And so I think as a writer, it made me realize that I can push those boundaries. I might stop and think about, like, how much am I going to kill the art department by, writing some crazy thing, but that you don't have to limit yourself. They will make it happen.
Because I know a lot of times too with writers that, the first thing that comes to mind, write for the budget, write for your location. I mean, truthfully, sometimes it kills you. Now, things that you were thinking that, make the movie may actually kill it at the same time. So.
Oh, completely. And I'm sure you experienced that as an independent filmmaker yourself.
Yeah. I mean, there are times when, just because of budget, we've had to pull back. And that was a shame because it can really feed the story. I mean,
Yeah.
so I totally identify with that, but that's wonderful that you have that freedom and that ability.
At the same time, though, I will say this. One thing I've learned from self-producing is that sometimes when you're presented with a limitation, it ends up being a great challenge that can better serve what you are writing. I think sometimes having limits to rein you in can actually make your writing stronger. I've definitely had that where I've written a short film or something and I had some scene that was too elaborate for what we have, and then I rewrote it, and the simple thing actually ends up serving the story much better than the elaborate thing that I originally had in mind. So I think having some limitations isn't the worst thing for a writer.
It's just like you said, it's a challenge, and I know, especially when things are flowing, and then all of a sudden you come to a roadblock. It's just more frustrating. It's not.
Yeah. And the thing is, even on a high budget show or on, something where you have unlimited resources, you will still hit those snags. In my opinion, is much more interesting and much more visually interesting than had they shot what was originally on the page.
Yeah. Let's jump to Femmbot PHD. How did you get started with that group? You said you went to UCB?
I took classes at UCB, but Femmbot actually is a house team at the PAC Theater in West Hollywood. And basically, I started doing shows at the PAC Theater. My friend Jonathan Grant used to run a sketch show there called Rotato, and he brought me on as a guest writer a couple times. And I met this girl named Jessica Amal Sherry, and she asked me to come be a guest for Femmbot one month, and so I did it. We have a different guest on Femmbot every month.
Okay.
And so I came on as just a guest, thinking that's all that was, and I had a great time. I really liked them. I knew they had a reputation for being one of the stronger teams at the theater.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't disappointed, and I had a really good time. And then about a month later, they reached out to me and asked if I wanted to join the team permanently, and I was really excited and took it on. And I haven't regretted it since. It's a place where I get to test myself in any way I want to as a writer, and then the girls themselves have very quickly become my support system, and vice versa.
That's a great thing to have.
Yeah.
What was your first skit that you did with them? Do you remember?
It's a sketch.
Okay.
And I only say that because it's a funny running thing that anyone that writes sketch always gets upset when people call them skits.
Okay.
But it's like a funny little running joke. It's the first sketch I wrote with them was a parody of The Little Mermaid.
Uh-huh.
Where Prince Eric, it's the day after Prince Eric and Ariel get married, and he realizes he married a 16-year-old girl, like he didn't know the whole time, and realizes he's a pedophile. So, and right away I realized with something like that there's no, one thing I love about the team is that we take a lot of risks in what we write and what we perform on stage, and nobody ever limits each other and what those risks are. And it actually kind of goes back to your first question about offensive humor.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we'll write something that's very on the line, and nobody, within reason, nobody tends to hold each other back. We're always willing to support each other and try it.
There's no better environment than one that helps develop you.
Yeah.
I've been part of environments where there's just a lot of restrictions, and then you find yourself creatively frustrated.
Yes.
And then roadblocks, writer's blocks, all that fun stuff. So, I'm really glad to hear that.
No, we've got sketches that are very about, like, bodily functions and stuff like that, and are pretty gross and what have you, and there's never been a moment where someone's pitched it and someone's been like, no, I find that gross, or, I don't want to do that. We've always been very much on board with, like, okay, we'll give it a try.
Well, do you have any new shows that you're working on, or do you have any other performances? I remember when I first met you, you were doing stand-up at the Clubhouse, and I don't know if that was like a show that just popped up and you guys just got together and just, let's perform, or was that something planned?
That specifically was Dana Gould wanted to test out an hour, and very graciously I think knew I'm trying my hat at stand-up a little bit, so he let me have 5 minutes to open for him. Or really, I opened for Valerie Toffee. Yeah, and so it was kind of just a fun thing of like, we have this space for an hour, we can do whatever we want. So why don't you and Valerie go ahead and open for me? It'll be fun. So.
Well, it's definitely fun. It's definitely something different to see. When comedians try out jokes, you definitely get to see the flexibility of a person.
Yeah.
That pivoting on stage is what amazes me the most, because as soon as they have a joke that doesn't work, they turn around and there's something that comes out, and then there's like belly laughs. So I have to admire that, and hats off to you guys, because I know, at least at this point in the game, that's something that's a skill that's just something definitely to be admired. So,
well, that specifically, what my takeaway from that experience was, I go to a lot of open mics, like any stand-up comedian that's starting out.
right.
And when you go to an open mic, nobody is there to watch the other comedians. Everyone's in their own head thinking about their own stuff, or in a bad mood or what have you. So it's really hard to get people to laugh at your jokes. Like, it's hard to win the audience over at an open mic. And coming into a room where people are there because they want to laugh and they want to have fun, it's a very different experience, and it was very rewarding as a comedian to be like, oh, these jokes are funny. Like, people do laugh at what I say. So it was a very rewarding experience. So I hope I get to do it again.
So, just getting back to you, what are your goals? Like, what do you see yourself doing in like 5 years? Do you see yourself running your own show, or being a writer on, staff
Realistically,
writer?
I mean, my big term goal is I eventually want to sell a show and be a showrunner of my own show. I'd say that's probably about 10 years out if I had to guess, though.
Okay.
If I'm lucky. And that's assuming I'm lucky and those things happen.
Right.
I'd say within the next 5 years, I hope just to get staffed on more shows and continue writing for TV, and, maybe if I'm lucky, get a development deal here or there. But actually, you mentioned earlier talking about how now is a great time to write because there's so much opportunity. I think it's a double-edged sword. There is a lot more opportunity than there has been, but a lot of it, there's so many platforms to write for. I think audiences are a bit inundated. So it's a little easier to sell a show or, get a development deal, but it's not the same as it used to be. It doesn't quite carry the same weight that it used to.
Right.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, there's definitely streaming did a lot to open up the doors, but at the same time, yeah, I agree that some great shows get missed because the platforms themselves, there's so many that, you end up having to pick and choose, and the way they have it depends on the marketing of that particular channel. If they're not very good at that, you get missed.
Exactly. And I think audiences are kind of inundated with content, so it just makes it tough.
Right. And then even the broadcast channels are getting greedy because now they want to have streaming channels too. So
yeah.
So it's like, I already watch you on cable, or I already watch you on, network. Why do I have to watch you streaming also? So
exactly.
It kind of sullies the pot a little bit, but it's one of those things where if it's good content, you really like it, it'll find its way through. But it's got to be good content, especially, again, you've got a wide variety to choose from.
Yeah.
It's good that you're in horror comedy. Horror comedy, there isn't that much around. So
that's true. Which is funny, because I think people, when they think of what kind of projects they want to do that are like ambitious and fun, a lot of times they lean towards either comedy or horror.
Right.
So you would think that there would be more, but yeah, it's kind of a limited genre.
It's niche. It's definitely niche. So
yeah.
It's a one-up for you.
Yeah, definitely.
So your episode of Stand Against Evil is going to be...
It's gonna fall somewhere either 5 or 6.
Okay.
It should air, I believe, November 14th, I want to say. I mean, I don't know for certain, but I'm pretty sure that's when it's scheduled to
Yeah,
air.
no, that's it. So November 14th. Do you have a title for that episode yet?
Yeah, it's called Vampire Creek. Actually, there is one more thing I do want to throw in.
Okay.
One thing that was really cool about getting to write that specific episode is Dana and I had talked about writing an episode that would be centered around Denise.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that was really exciting because Deborah Baker Jr., I started taking classes at UCB, and I would see her perform on the UCB stage. And she also ran a show called the Etch-a-Sketch Show out of the Loft Ensemble downtown. And occasionally I'd put sketches up there, and I'd see her around, and I always thought she was really talented. And, like, maybe someday I can be on the UCB stage like she is. And knowing that my first episode of TV was centered around her was a really exciting and surreal thing of like, oh, this person that I already look up to and associate with, even at a distance. It's just crazy to think I got to write something for her.
Yeah, Deborah is very eclectic. I mean, she's all over the place, but it's awesome. I don't know where she gets her energy. Maybe it's from that ice cream. But it's like she can go from something very somber to something so crazy, so exciting that it's just like that energy, and it permeates everybody.
She's one of those people too, like John Belushi was like this, where you don't necessarily get it as much on a TV show or a movie, but if you ever see them perform live, when they walk on stage, you're drawn to them. Like,
Right.
they just have that presence.
Yeah, it's like a magnet almost.
Yeah,
And
yeah, exactly.
we did an interview with her, and
Yeah.
she makes everybody look good.
Yes, yeah, and she is also very good at making you feel very important in the moment, no matter who you are when you talk to her. And
Well, I'm glad that's your first experience when you're produced writing. I mean, that's like a dream come true.
oh yeah, I had so many moments when we were shooting the episode where I kept thinking, like, this isn't real. It's just a dream, and you're gonna wake up and still be working some, day job, and it didn't feel real. I was like, I can't believe this is actually happening to me.
Just one question, since you brought that up,
Mm-hmm.
there was that recent article. It's not so recent, but where Jeffrey, I forgot his last name, where it was a guy he was an actor on the Cosby Show, and
Oh.
yeah, that guy, and he was working at Trader Joe's part time because
Yes.
a lot of people have this misconception that people in the entertainment industry are working in the entertainment industry full time and that's all they do. And when they do anything else, they've fallen from grace.
Oh no, and that's one of those things when you're in the entertainment industry you get. I can't tell you how many times, including when I was working on Stan, where you go on hiatus and you still have to find a means to get by. So I'd be working like delivering groceries or something, and I'd bump into a friend who had like a starring role on a network show, and they're doing the same thing. It's just it depends on what your financial situation is, but most people working in entertainment still have to get by in the meantime.
Well, that's good to hear because a lot of people, again, have this misconception that they failed because they're delivering groceries, they're working in an Amazon warehouse, or, they have to stop what they're doing because they don't have any work at the moment. But the reality is that you are still doing what you're doing and you didn't fail. It's just right now you have to do something else.
That's exactly it.
And, again, there's that Hollywood stigma that I don't know if it's a media thing. I don't know if it's just the way that it's portrayed, but you're always working. You're a successful actor because you're always working as an actor, and that or you're always having a show as a writer, or you're always producing. But and when you talk to people in the industry who aren't going to give you the song and dance, that's not how it is.
Yeah, no, and I mean, it depends. Eventually, as writer, producer, actor, you do reach a point where you make enough money that you don't have to work in between gigs, and you can live a pretty comfortable life, obviously.
Right.
But yeah, when you're starting out, it's not uncommon that you'll see somebody who, a face you might recognize from multiple shows that still has to work a day job in between, I actually remember, it's funny you say that, I won't name his name, but I remember a good friend of mine that's I don't know if he's had a starring role, but he's definitely popped up on a lot of network TV shows.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he posted on Facebook once of like, tune in to this channel tonight and you can catch me on this show. And then later go to Barney's Beanery where they'll see me crying over my shoes or something like that. And I read it to a friend of mine and she got really disheartened. And she was like, wait, he can work on this show and still have to work at Barney's Beanery? And I was like, well, yeah, he's a working actor. Like, of course. That's not how that works.
Right. So, just a tip for all you listeners out there that are starting out and feeling that you failed because you've got to take a second job. That's not the case. It's just, a step on this stairway to success, basically. Everybody's done it. Popular, well-known actors, writers, and directors have done it. I've known a director who's got a hit movie with named actors. He was at one point eating butter sandwiches.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that's going to be the permanent reality. That's just the temporary.
No, that's exactly it. You do what you do. You do what you have to do to get by until you don't have to do that anymore, basically.
Cool. Well, thank you again for the opportunity, Kandice. This was great. I can't wait to see your episode. And,
yeah.
Could you tell people, if you have a social media presence, where they can follow you?
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. My Twitter handle is at Kandice Mart, KandicemArt. And then my Instagram handle is at Kandice_Martellaro, KANDICE_MARTELLARO. And then Femmbot PHD is at Femmbot PHD on Twitter, and then Femmbot_PHD for Instagram.
Awesome. I think I asked the question before, but do you have any upcoming shows in the near future?
Femmbot PHD has a show once a month at the PAC. We are the first Sunday of every month. We go up at 9:30 p.m. and it's an hour show.
Okay.
And I'd say that's the biggest thing I want to promote right now. Yeah, I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, we'll look for your episode on Stand Against Evil, airing November 14th, which is Wednesday, and that's 10 o'clock p.m. on IFC. And then, yeah, it was great talking to you. Again, thank you so much.
Awesome.
All right, Kandice, thank you so much. Take care.
Alrighty, thank you.
Okay.
Bye. I'm Kandice Martellaro, and you're listening to That's My Entertainment. That's My Entertainment. What's yours?